Hi there, Megan Thompson here with Megan Thompson Coaching, and today we will cover 3 things that you need to watch out for if you are finding yourself burnt out in the meltdown cycle, parenting a highly sensitive child. So let's dive in. If you are a parent of a sensitive kid or teen and you have gotten to the point where you just feel like you need to put an out of order sticker on your forehead for the next 3 weeks, make sure that you tune in. We're going to cover all about what to do, what to watch out for in this pattern, and where you can focus to break out of it. So in parenting highly sensitive kids, for years and years and years, our clients have been able to break out of this pattern consistently. Here at MTC, we help parents do this around the world and have helped hundreds of families whose kids came to us. The families came to us with their kids struggling so much so that they were tossing furniture at school. They were taking 40 minutes to get out the door. They are hitting and kicking and screaming at each other. Obviously, if you're trying to get out the door and your kids are just all over each other, it can take you 20 minutes to just make your coffee in the morning, right? Let alone get the kids to answer you related to whether or not they want eggs or bagels for breakfast, right? And this is so tiring. And this can be true if your children are 9, 10, 11. And when that's happening, as a parent, you need to be able to notice how numb you are to this experience. And I'm going to cover this today because parenting a sensitive child is a completely different ball game. And then when we think about kiddos who are stuck in this meltdown cycle where the explosive behaviors are happening on a daily, multiple times a day or weekly basis, it's very important for you as a parent, no matter your child's age, to start to notice if these big behaviors are happening. Identify that 2 weeks is a pattern. That is when your child is starting to devise an automatic thought, an automatic thinking process, an automatic behaving process, to the point where they are developing coping skills that are ineffective. Those skills are to explode or implode. So those explosions I just mentioned can be aggressive. They can also be related to property destruction, punching holes in walls, throwing things, whatever it is in sight, screaming at the top of their lungs to the point where you end up with a headache by the time the morning routine is over. And this is also relevant for sensitive kids and teens who shut down. So it might be that your sensitive teen takes 40 minutes to get out of bed. You can't even get them to tolerate you turning on a light for them. And it feels incredibly draining to check every 5 minutes and say, hey, told you to wake up. It's time. Let's go. Come on. I told you to wake up, right? And so you can move through this entire pattern of the morning routine. And guys, this is important, parents. If the morning routine isn't your challenge, I'm sure that you've dealt with this in the afternoon routine or the bedtime routine. So I'm just gonna, for the sake of time, use one example. But parents who are working to get their kiddos out of bed, their teenagers out of bed, it's very important for you to notice that this isn't typical preteen, teenage life. If your teen or preteen is not able to get out of bed on a daily basis, and it takes you 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes or more to get out of the house in the morning, it's very important for you to notice that this is a significant problem. And I'm sure in all of these experiences, you've tried all of the things, right? We have so many families who contact us who have been throwing things at the wall to see what sticks, and it just feels like their walls are covered in spaghetti and they still have a melting down or shutting down child. And this is not only tiring for you, but it's also tiring for your kid, right? It's heartbreaking to watch your child be frozen in anxiety, but it's also stinking frustrating when you notice that your child is angry at you when you're trying to help them. And this dynamic can be so, so hard. And so obviously, being burnt out as a parent is not something we're here to judge, to tell you that you need to buck up, mama or dad, get with the program, right? Like whatever relationship you have with your child is a symptom of the meltdown cycle. And when you're struggling at this level, it's not for lack of trying. Let's be honest here, right? You've tried all of the things. You've tried to pull up the shades and do it kindly, right? You've tried playing music. You've tried, knocking at the door. You've tried giving them their own alarm. You've tried natural consequences. If they're late or they skip school, who cares, right? Not a who cares, but like they need to learn from that. That's what I mean by that. And so better early than later, right? If they're 11 missing school, then it's a good thing they're missing school at 11, so they don't miss it when they're 18. But then here you have a 13-year-old, and this has been going on for 2 years. Now what? And so with that level of exhaustion comes a lot of frustration. And we're here to support you in noticing that, but also in observing that this is not how parenting a highly sensitive child needs to be, okay? And this is number one. The first thing that you need to notice is that the mental weight of all of this can be crushing, and it also can be numbing. And burnout can quickly lead to victim mentality. And so victim mentality is, life is happening to me. My kid is doing this to me. And my child is willfully choosing to not engage in the limits and expectations that I am setting forth for them. And with that level of reaction to your sensitive child, it is going to continue to drive a consistent wedge in your relationship with your child. There is one critical component to this. People who are experiencing apathy, which is basically a numbness, an experience that is a side effect of burnout. I should say there's burnout and then there's apathy, right? So right on the cusp of being tired and exhausted comes resentment and frustration. My kiddo just will never get this will never work. That's helplessness. I don't know how, might as well throw my hands up. And then there's dread. I don't want to wake up in the morning because I don't want to deal with my kid today. And then there's resentment right after that. And resentment, when we experience resentment, we start to feel angry at our loved ones, especially as a parent. And I'm speaking about this in this context. Resentment is feeling frustrated, critical, and just negative towards your child, even though you know that that's not helping. Because you're so drained, it's hard to see how your child will change, and it's hard to see how your child will shift out of their behavior, because like I mentioned before, you've tried all the things that you can think of. And when this is happening, the next emotional experience, and this is really important for you to be aware of as a parent of a sensitive child, the next thing on that docket is numbness. And this is when you start to justify the behavior that your child is experiencing because you just can't simply lift a finger anymore in supporting them. And what do I mean by that? I mean, you stop getting creative to solve the problem, but you also stop expecting your child to follow through on your expectations. And this is a very different approach than having patience with your child to get there someday, eventually, soon, right? That's probably where you started out, and then it started to get urgent for you. You were feeling exasperated and anxious about it. So there was a lot of urgency around needing to get your kid to follow through on the morning routine, or follow through on the afternoon or bedtime routine, whatever it is that you're expecting of your child that they've been significantly and for a long time struggling with. And then there starts to be an experience where you throw your hands up. And you need to be able to notice, as I mentioned before, 2 weeks is a pattern. So if more days than not, you've been throwing your hands up and just walking away and feeling like there's just no other way to do it unless I lay down the hammer and make threats, or no other way to do it, and that just is what it is. So my kids missed like 3 weeks of school, or sporadically 3 out of 5 days of school over the last month, every week, things like that. It's very important to take stock of the patterns that you've developed at this point, because we can see that happen pretty quickly. But once we're in victim mode, we stop thinking that we have control over the situation enough to make an impact. Now, I'm not saying that you need to control your child. Notice the word control. Is in a sense of your own personal control, that you can influence your circumstances. You can influence the situations that you're in. And this particular situation is that your child's not following through on your situation, on your expectations. So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about influence. And the victim mentality is, I don't know, they just won't do it. They're just, I've tried that before. I've tried this before. I get it, right? So if you have anybody who's giving you advice, perhaps a loved one, perhaps a close friend perhaps a friend who happens to work in the mental health field, or even professionals that you've engaged with, pediatricians, therapists, school counselors, truancy officers, etc., all of the above, they might be giving you suggestions, and it's quick and easy for you to say, no, that hasn't worked. I'm not going to try it again. I'm done. And so then apathy turns into resignation. And so this is really important, because burnout, the cycle of burnout could quickly go down into a slope of resignation. And this is when parents start to give up on their kid's potential. Now, I'm not saying you're going to give up on your kid. We hear many parents, when they discuss their concerns and their worries, say, I'll never give up on my kid. And that's true to an extent, because the I'll never give up on my kid means it's highly unlikely that you would ever kick your kid out of their house, that you would ever stop feeding them, that you would ever stop loving them, right? But what I'm talking about is giving up on setting expectations. And that is absolutely something that can happen for parents of highly sensitive children and teens, more usual in adolescents, because parents have had many, many years of this experience. But if you see yourself just pulling teeth and your kid is 4 or 6, and it takes you 40 minutes to get out the door, and you're wondering, how long do I have to endure this? Especially if your child's early infancy, first couple of years, led to a lot of stay-at-home experiences, because your child was overwhelmed by the community, overwhelmed by preschool or daycare. That's 4 to 6 years already, right? Think about where you would be 10 years from now. And without being able to break out of this pattern. It's obvious that without clear and structured shifts for your child and for you, this is going to end up in a situation where you start to say, you know what? I think my kid is just a really challenging kid, and I've done the best I can. And this is something that we hear over and over and over again when we work with parents of teenagers who have significantly struggled, and to the point where their teens' needs require therapy. And so I'm speaking about this from a perspective of being a clinician as well as a parent coach, and parents whose kids are engaging in life-threatening behaviors, or severe truancy, severe risky behaviors, aggression, etc. They need therapy. And those teens, if they're motivated to go, though might not be motivated to do the work in the therapy, parents can get extremely tired and frustrated. And this is years and years of work that the therapist is working with that parent to break out of those patterns. And so I'm speaking about this from experience, not to scare you, but to let you know the signs, so that you can turn yourself back up the hill. If you're noticing that you've been rolling down that hill that I'm describing. So start to observe that, start to notice, because the victim mentality puts you in a position of me against my kid. And we really, really want you guys to be focusing on, it's us against the world, if you will. Kiddo, I've got you. right? And this is the most effective mindset that a parent of a highly sensitive child can have. And if you find yourself regularly forgetting that mindset that you had when you were holding your baby in your arms, and they were crying and you were snuggling them and you said, oh, you need a new diaper, let's get it. I've got you, right? It's that experience that as our children age, when we struggle to lead them out of emotional overwhelm, that belief that you can figure it out can really really diminish, and then that can eat away at you. And self-preservation, the human condition, is to notice that maybe it's not me, maybe it's somebody else. And then in that circumstance, it would be noticing, is it actually my kid to blame here? And that's you trying to break out of your own emotional overwhelm. And so when we think about where burnout can lead, it's incredibly important that in parenting a highly sensitive child, you don't fall into the trap of deciding that it's your child who's causing this issue, or that your child is the willful participant of this level of refusal, of this level of procrastination, of negotiation, of dawdling in their own little world. Maybe it might not be an unpleasant circumstance, but just tiring in the sense that your kid is all over the map in the morning. And those big feelings, while happy, are distracting them from their routine. So all of this to notice, it's really important that we don't put your child in the position to have the skills that they don't have. Your child needs skills to manage their big emotions so that they can get the task at hand complete, even if they're frustrated, disappointed, upset, distracted, imaginative, feeling happy about something else, and they don't want to focus. All of those things are absolutely possible for a parent who breaks out of the meltdown cycle. And highly sensitive kids can follow through in a routine even if they're not in the best of moods. And that's life. That's what we want, right? We want our children to feel resilient in their circumstances. And so you have to start with the belief that nobody was put on this earth to be miserable. And that's true for your child. Your child does not want to feel miserable. Because that's miserable. Who wants to feel that? Your child's not willfully making choices to tear apart your relationship. Okay, and it's really important to keep in mind. So how do we fix this, right? All right, well, okay, Megan, I get it. It isn't my kiddo. My kiddo is a kiddo. They're 5, 6, 9, 11, 12. They've only been on this earth for so many years. So now what? Right? So maybe you might be thinking, okay, all right, I got to turn my mindset around. I got to shift how I'm handling stress. And so we have lots of parents who say, you know what, I'm doing the best I can. We're stuck in the meltdown cycle, but I am a cheerleader for myself. I exercise. I go to yoga. I go to the gym. I book appointments with my friends, and we keep them, and we dish about our kids and about our stressors, and I vent. And while I'm saying social life is important as a human being, we need to feel connected to the community. If your main goal of breaking out of the meltdown cycle, your main approach, is to merely focus on building your own superhero mindset, that is not going to break you out of the pattern, right? Because it's only one part of the puzzle. This is really important for you as a parent. Self-care is important, but it doesn't affect the number 3, which is what I was speaking about next, right? Let's make sure that we're all clear on number 2. Number 2 is that the meltdown cycle is due to a mismatch in parenting. And so, like I said, you could shift your parenting approach. You can shift the way that you see your kid. You can shift the way that you manage stress. But this is not going to break you out of burnout altogether. Because number 3 is that your child needs to still learn skills to manage their emotions. And so when you're working with your child, with yourself, maybe you even go to your own therapist to manage your own stress. This still leaves your child in a position where they don't have skills. So this is important because you can read from many quote-unquote experts who say that they understand the highly sensitive personality trait, and the majority of their messaging is that behavior is communication. Your child's trying to communicate something to you. So meet the need, and notice that once you love your child and meet the need in that way, give your child a big old hug, tell them you're here while they're melting down, and notice that, help them notice that you love them no matter what they do. This can be a way for you to manage. And so then they're teaching burnout strategies, anti-burnout strategies. They're teaching calm down strategies for you. And then they're saying, you know what? Your kiddo is highly sensitive, so they're bound to have meltdowns. And I have to tell you that that is simply incorrect. Being highly sensitive and having meltdowns do not go hand in hand, especially not daily, multiple times a day, or weekly meltdowns, okay? Now, I'm not saying that a human being can never hit their maximum limit and lose it. But what I'm talking about is those 10, 15, 20-minute, 30-minute, 90-minute. We've seen parents whose kids have been on edge and on fire in their whole body all day long, right? However many minutes that is. None of that is part of the highly sensitive trait. That is a symptom of the meltdown cycle for highly sensitive kids or teens, okay? So this is a problem that your family is experiencing, that the whole family dynamic needs to be shifted around, and it is not something that you need to expect or get used to in your family with your child. Your child is clearly missing skills, and so are you, and you are the one who needs to teach your child the skills based on what the research demonstrates for how highly sensitive children learn. And so when we think about breaking out of this pattern, your child needs to learn how to manage their emotions. Like I mentioned before, your child can absolutely notice, I don't want to go to school, and school is something I'm going to go to today, and because because of XYZ reasons, right? And they can go out the door and do that in a way that isn't necessarily happy-go-lucky and skipping in unicorns and rainbow poops, or rainbows and unicorn poops. But with that being said, we're not expecting that, right? We're not expecting pie in the sky. Everything is awesome living, because that's not how life is. With that being said, your life can absolutely be primarily in joy and gratitude and happiness and positively expecting things to go well for you. That is absolutely a mindset that you can build once you have a strategy to do that. And our clients do that all the time. And that is what keeps you moving forward and supporting your child and building the same, right? It's really important to notice that children without this meltdown cycle see themselves as capable of doing anything, right? You ask a kid what they want to do, they're like, I want to go to the moon. We just recently experienced a death in the family, and my kiddo was asking about how I've lost all of my grandparents at this point, and she was wondering how my extended relatives had passed, and many of them passed due to complications from nicotine addiction. And so I explained that to her, and she was saying, well, when I grow up, I want to create a school that helps adults learn not to smoke cigarettes. And it was lovely to, that was just something that she came up with, and she was going all about how she would help people join her school and how she would help them think about it, because we talked about how all of them, actually, let me back up. Most of my grandparents died due to complications, cancer, etc., of nicotine addiction, and how that was very difficult for them because it was a different time. We were talking about the history of all of that, and why, she knows and we know now that nicotine is extremely dangerous, and cigarettes are terrible for you. But they didn't know that growing up, and so then it was hard to quit, right? So we had this conversation, and she had this idea immediately in that to design a school that helps adults quit. And this is something that we hadn't spoken about often. She knows because she does have a sensitive sniffer in public, like what, she will say out and about, what's that smell? Cigarettes, gross. But aside from that, we haven't gone far beyond the concept of addiction, because she's 5, and it was a question and often in passing. But in this circumstance, we were speaking about my family history, and all of that. And so I'm using that as an example, right? We know, your children have had the same dreams, right? I'm gonna be an astronaut, and I'm going to go fly to be the first astronaut to live on Mars, or I'm going to discover different stars, or I'm going to be a world famous basketball player, or the first lacrosse player who meets XYZ goal. I don't know. Sports aren't my thing. Or I'm going to be a scientist who invents the cure for cancer, right? Children will believe all of what they want for themselves when they feel free enough to do that. But highly sensitive kids who are stuck in that meltdown cycle might have a dream, because highly sensitive kids can have that thorough imagination. But what's missing is the capability, the belief that they'll achieve it, so much so that they go on a clear and specific plan, devising how to make it happen. And so when I delight in my child, whenever she comes up with these phenomenal, community building and community influencing ideas, that the freedom in watching her think about these things and really plan out an actual marketing plan. She's not calling it marketing, and I'm not teaching her any of that, but that's what it is. How to help people come in the door and stay in the door, and if they're not, if they're thinking about not doing it, how she'll help them, decide to do it for themselves, and remember what they want in life, and that it's not healthy to smoke cigarettes, etc. And just all of these ideas of persistence and resilience, right? Highly sensitive kids have that capacity to get very detail oriented about it, right? Because, like I mentioned, this is an example. Occasionally I'll use my daughter as an example. We have plenty of parents who that we've served whose kids are the same thing, but a highly sensitive kid is going to come up with the idea and then notice, where are the angles where this might not work, and what's my solution to that? That's creative problem solving. But a highly sensitive child who is stuck in the meltdown cycle is going to see a problem and then not be able to move out of it, not be able to think outside the box. And this is where your child is stuck. Your child is saying, I don't want to go to school. There's no solution that's going to help me go to school, so I'm not going to go, right? And that might be an intellectual conversation they're having with you, actual verbal conversation they're having with you, or it's playing out in their behavior. And, in terms of refusals, complete and utter overwhelm, meltdown behavior, aggressive behavior, etc., or just total shutdown, frozen, hiding under the bed, hiding under the covers, can't do it, can't wake up, etc. And this runs the gamut. We see all kinds of behavior regardless of your kid's age. So if you hear me speaking about these behavior concerns, don't jump to the conclusion that I'm talking about 6-year-olds here. We see this behavior in 11, 12, 13-year-olds. We see this behavior in 15, 16, 17-year-olds. And so it's important for you to notice that we've served families with this issue regardless of their kids' ages. And the important piece to notice is that there really is 4 simple solutions to break out, 4 simple steps to break out of the pattern, okay? In addition to managing your mindset, because this is what we're talking about, all of that. So we know that's step number 1, right? Step number 2 is being able to shift out of this pattern in a playful way. Communicate with your child or teen in a way that actually speaks their language. So they need to hear with you that that you understand them. Like I mentioned before, that you've got them and you're going to lead them out of this. And next is that you're going to do that in a systematic way. You're going to teach them that their best future possible is absolutely available to them, and you're going to work on that one at a time with any of their ineffective behaviors, so that they're not flooded by needing to fix all of the things, right? So your child might be struggling with the school workload, they might be struggling with the environment at school, or both, and they obviously need to build skills there, but you can't do the same thing, right? Throw everything at the wall to see what sticks with your kid by trying to teach them a bazillion coping skills for all sorts of scenarios at the same time. That's also overwhelming. So you need to be able to pinpoint the major intensity and pinpoint the priorities for your family. And that's important to observe that you need a strategy to do that. You need to be able to do this in a way that doesn't imply shame. And doesn't add shame to the table. Your child already feels ashamed by their behavior. They're highly sensitive, so they already see how their behavior is impacting other people. They might not act on how that shame impacts other people enough to change their behavior, because shame keeps you stuck, and shame is a blanket. It just covers you. It's like a fire retardant blanket. It just totally envelops the problem, and then you got to keep it on there to keep the fire from breathing again. And so that whole experience of being frozen, stuck, or quote unquote in denial of a problem is related to your child struggling with that emotional shame barrier. And this has to be broken down in a systematic way. You can't just convince your kid that they're great, that they're worthy, and that they're awesome, and have your kid believe you, because your child doesn't believe you. So convincing doesn't work, and then we need to be able to do that in a way that's helped hundreds of children. Right? You need to be able to follow a professional and work with a professional directly, who can break out of this pattern. Elaine Aron has said over the years as well, and she's the one who coined the highly sensitive personality trait term, sensory processing sensitivity. She developed the term in the 1990s, and she has said specifically that parents of sensitive kids should work with professionals to break out of patterns that they're in, because it is a significant minority in terms of the challenges that you're having, and so it requires a specialized approach. You can't just listen to a general parenting book, or a general parenting, positive parenting, gentle parenting, solution-focused book to break out of this pattern. Even books that describe explosive kids can be extremely complicated in their approach, and then that obviously leaves you stuck when you're trying to troubleshoot and when the examples don't fit your kid. And because you can't talk to a book. And that obviously is really tricky. So I encourage you to have a conversation with our team of experts. Book a call. If you're ready to break out of this pattern, then there's no need to wait. We have space in our calendar, and we're happy to serve you. Break out of the pattern of the meltdown cycle, and if what we do is going to work for you, we'll tell you how that works. Okay, we're going to talk about where you're stuck, what you're struggling with specifically, what you need to do to fix it, and we'll cover that as well. If your goals are something that we've helped families break out and to go into those goals as well, and if that's something that we can do, then we'll share that with you, because we don't work with families that we've never who with patterns or with behaviors or with emotional circumstances that we've never helped before. We've been dealing with this and serving families in this realm for over 10 years, respectively. Each of the professionals on my team have over a decade of experience in this field. And the beauty of having an international team is that I get to internationally source experts on my team, and that means that everybody that we've worked with, that we work with here, has been doing this for a really, really long time, and that allows us to stay focused on our expertise and notice that we get to work with the families that we know we can help, and that obviously makes it an incredibly rewarding professional experience for us. So we keep moving forward, because our mission here is to help highly sensitive kids and teens break out of the meltdown cycle, so that they eliminate or prevent the suicidal thoughts and behaviors that are pervasive in the highly sensitive population, because our goal is to eliminate suicidal thoughts and behaviors for the highly sensitive population around the world. And we need to do that by supporting parents in breaking out of that meltdown cycle, that shutdown cycle, because that is what is the catalyst to this behavior. And so when we think about that, how to do that extensively for you, so that you can start to feel that freedom, that emotional freedom for yourselves. The first step that everybody has taken who has broken out of this pattern is that they've booked a call with our team. Go ahead over to meganthompsoncoaching.com/talk or meganthompsoncoaching.com/teen talk, and we are happy to have a conversation with you. If what we do isn't going to be a fit, then we will tell you that. And we'll tell you exactly what plans you need to put in place, who you need to consult with, what evidence-based therapy treatment, if that's relevant, that you need to follow through on, because we've had lots of experience in that avenue, working in outpatient, inpatient, residential care, etc. So we know what families are a good fit for what we do, and what families need a different level of care or a different approach than what we do. So we're happy to make sure that everybody who comes to us has a plan and can take immediate action on that plan. Right? So we're happy to speak with you. Again, that's a free phone call, and the conversation can be scheduled at meganthompsoncoaching.com/talk or meganthompsoncoaching.com/teen talk if you're parenting a high schooler. That's U.S. high school age. So thank you, and we look forward